I like the word adaptive grazing management because you can change and be flexible and use different grazing management based on what the animal's looking like and as well as the grass, and just need to be flexible in grazing management. We talk about how many days we stay on a field and how many days of rest, but in general we need to be basing it on the animal as well as what we're seeing in the grass instead of days. So my typical rotation though is I'd like to turn in when the grass is 8 inches or 10 or taller, and then graze down usually I'd like to graze the top third, and then so leave the bottom 2/3 and come back a little sooner, and the regrowth is so much higher. Sometimes I do take half, leave half, so it might be 8 inches, take it down to 4. With grazing management, I think most people think, well, I don't have time for that. But it's just a different allocation of time. You've got to look at the whole, and we're not cutting as much hay, we're not feeding as much, and not having to mow as much, not having to fertilize as much, not having to lime as much. And then able to run higher stocking rates that are still maintaining the grass height. Yeah, it's just visually it's exciting to see all the grass vigor and the regrowth so quick where you've managed well. On the recovery period of the grass, I like to have them at different stages, and it gets back to that adaptive grazing. I like to have at least some pastures rest 90 days all of the year, and that's some protection for insurance against drought and winter to have that available. And once it gets 90 days old, if the yellow leaves are shading the green leaves, then it's getting a little stale. So I'll graze that pasture, and then my 60-day, some of it will become the 90-day recovery. In general, I'm on a 45-day rotation. And then rest periods will vary anywhere from, say, 30 days to 90 days in the growing season, and then can be as long as 200 days in the overwinter and into the spring. There's a square point, as if the animals had bit it and it hadn't been a long enough recovery for it to turn into a point like this one here. That's what we want it to look more like before we turn in on it. The square point or cutoff point just hadn't had enough recovery time. Yeah, I don't like to feed more than, pushing it, but 120 days is a possibility, but I really like for it to be more like 60 days. I'm not there right now. I'm at about 90 days of hay feeding per year. I feed some in the fall, and then again I'll start up in probably January and feed again through March, but they'll be on and off, and I try to hold some good grass for March because I know when they're calving they need it worse than they do now. The highest cost activity on most cattle farms is feeding, and it's usually hay. It's 2 times the cost of grazing, so if we can cut that cost or expense even just a few days, like when I'm feeding hay, usually when they're on full feed, it's 3 rolls a day, and that's about $120. So I'm saving $120 every day I don't feed hay. So the way to ration it and the paddocks extends the grazing season because they're not tromping it down so much and not wasting it so much. Of course, the word waste is trying to remove that term because we're cycling some if it returns to the ground, but want it to go through the animal if possible and ration out the grass so that it lasts longer in the season. And I think with good grazing management, a conservative number is you can increase or decrease the amount of hay feeding by maybe 30%, something like that. So like if you're feeding 120 days now, you would be feeding somewhere around 90 days. Yeah, so stockpiling grass where we set aside some acreage and let it grow grass for say winter usually. How much is needed? Textbook answer is 1 acre per cow or animal unit, but in reality it'd be nice to be more. Acre and a half, even 2 acres per cow would be a luxury. And then you've got to ration it out after you've stockpiled it, and that's probably the most cost-effective practice we have. As long as they're getting fresh grass in front, and I've pushed it just to see how soon they would start back grazing. You know, you're not getting as much regrowth in the winter. But anytime it's 59 degrees for like 3 days or higher, then we're getting some growth. So I like to leave some leaf area out there. I don't like to, the first rotation through, I'll either take a top third, and then I may come back and take the top half, and then when it all gets down to 2 inches, it's time, I like to go ahead and lock them down and not let them get it any lower than 2 inches, because the bottom 2 inches of, say, fescue, orchard grass is where most of the carbon storage is, and you're really going to set back spring growth if you take it too low. So that's pretty much what I do. And then on that sacrifice area or holding area, we can grow Bermuda here, so I'll go to a Bermuda grass based fescue stand and hold them on that area and feed hay.